It's the 20th of April 2025. We're out on a duneland path at Sandscale Hawes. Very quiet path and very peaceful it is out here too. Lots of butterflies and bees. There's apparently, I was talking to Pete Burton, and he was the former ranger down here at Roanhead or Sandscale Hawes. There's Prince. And he was telling me there's 80 different recorded species of bee here on this particular reserve. And he was telling me that when he became ranger, 200 different species had been identified here at Roanhead. And 18 years later, when Pete left, he'd upped that to 600 different species. So obviously Pete was doing something right, wasn't he? He's a very knowledgeable local historian and naturalist. It's one or the other. He doesn't walk around naked anyway. So yeah, he's an entertaining fella, is Pete. So here we are, out at nearly 6 o'clock on this, the Easter Sunday, and it's been progressively the hottest day of the year so far here in Barrow in Furness, which is good. It feels like summer has arrived. We had a spell of 3 or 4 weeks of sunny weather a couple of weeks ago, which came to an abrupt end with a lot of rain. But anyway, the sunshine's back for now. Oops, put my finger on the lens there. Look, that's my fingers. And the difference is, whereas the previous 3 weeks of sunshine were accompanied by a very cold easterly wind, there's no wind at all, and it's very, very pleasant indeed. It could be in Spain, maybe not. Don't know if they have sand dunes in Spain. I'll have to Google that. You having a shake? As you can see, there's lots of gorse in full bloom, and certainly as we come round this corner into a little bowl or depression, the gorse is spectacular, beautiful to see. Played a few golf courses in my time with gorse on. One particular course had heather and gorse. That was Halifax Golf Club, and that's a very tricky course used for the Yorkshire Championship, with its fiendishly tight fairways and sloping fairways, so you can hit your ball down the middle and your ball just rolls into the heather, and you've either got a very, very difficult shot because the heather grabs your club as you swing it through, or you just don't find your ball at all. So tricky old golf course, Halifax. I think I lost about 10 balls there, so never went back. Too hard for me, that. And not my level of golf, that. So there we are. Yeah, interesting story. A lady I was guarding for yesterday, she was, let me see, 87 years old, and got her reminiscing about her life, and she told me she got married at Easter, just after Easter actually, because the vicar wouldn't let her get married over the Easter weekend, but she got married shortly after Easter, and she was 19 years old. And I asked her what if she could recall the Second World War, and she said, well, I was only a little girl, but her elder brother was in the Navy, and one day her mother received a dreaded telegram. I've read stories about people in both wars, 1 and 2, absolutely dreading receiving telegrams because it was always bad news. And the telegram said that this lady Wendy, her brother, had been on a ship that had been sunk in the Atlantic, and he was listed as missing. And obviously that was massively distressing for the family. However, 2 weeks later, they received another telegram to say that he'd been picked up by another ship and he was actually alive. So that was good news, wasn't it? Here we are. Here's the dog who hates being photographed, standing quite nicely. I might have to get a screenshot of that in front of the gorse, all ablaze. That's quite a nice one, isn't it? Prince, Prince, Prince. See, this is what he does, he looks away. Do you want a biscuit? No reaction. Is that a cat? No reaction. No. He knows when I stand up I've given up. My knees can't flipping take it bending down too much these days. So yeah, that was a nice story. And then the Wendy said, oh, my dad was in the war as well. And I said, oh, was he? That's both your brother and your dad were in World War II, were they? And she said, oh, no. My dad, he was in World War One, the first war, the Great War. And he was in the trenches. And she pointed just behind her ear where your jaw kind of hinges, and she said my dad had a hole from a bullet just here, just behind the jawline, and it never healed. And those kids, me and my brother and sister, were always curious about it, but my mother said never to ask him how he got it, but he'd been shot in the trenches in World War One. Very fortunate to survive a headshot, and the bullet must have passed out of his cheek or something. But I said, did he have any other scars on his face? And she said no. So maybe he had his mouth open, maybe he was yawning, and the bullet came out of his open mouth. Maybe it passed through his teeth. But amazing story. There was let's go in a working men's club which burnt down in very mysterious circumstances about 7 or 8 years ago now in Barrow, called the House of Lords. It had a lovely facade on the front of the building. It was a listed building, and burnt down, as I say, in very strange circumstances. But anyway, back in the early 80s, there was 3 snooker tables, and 2 of the snooker tables were members only, pristine baize cloth, and 1 table was for non-members and deadbeats like me who weren't really very good at snooker, and it was like flipping playing on ice. There was no grip on that table. But anyway, there was an older gentleman who was about in the right age zone to be in World War One, and he had a bullet hole near his temple, and that hadn't healed up either. And he used to have this white cloth. Well, I say white, it was probably white when it started the day. It certainly wasn't white by the time it ended the day, because this rather unpleasant looking fluid kind of dripped out of his bullet hole wound, and he used to dab it every few seconds, and when he was playing a shot at snooker, he'd always like dab the bullet hole wound before he bent over the cloth and played his shot. But he'd be sat there waiting to play the next game, and all this stuff was oozing out of his bullet hole wound and swinging next to his face as he was playing his shot, and you were kind of pleading, "Oh, don't go on the cloth, don't go on the cloth." And he'd quickly play his shot and whip the big white-ish hanky out of his pocket and dab his face again, poor fella. But yeah, it was fairly nauseated, let's face it. There was a great little fella who used to go in there, the House of Lords, who had just simply the best name, and he was about, if he was 5 foot, I'm being generous really, a little flat cap. He was of the flat cap generation, and as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, all the little old men, they had their flat caps and waistcoats and tweed jackets and ties, and they were the generation who grew up smartly. And as the years passed, there was fewer and fewer of them, and then by the time the millennium came, if you saw somebody with a flat cap on, then he was the last of them. And that generation, the generation who fought in the horrendous wars of World War One, and quite a few who'd fought in World War Two were gone, and it was the passing of a generation who generally didn't speak about the war and the horrors that they'd seen, and they came back and just pretty much got on with life. But a lot of them came back obviously wounded, injured, maimed, and they didn't really get the assistance that they should have done, begging on the streets of Britain, men who'd lost their limbs in the First War, very badly treated. But anyway, I was telling you about this particular chap, and little fella, and he'd always say hello. He was a nice bloke, and he was called Albert Snailham. What a great name, what a great British name that is, Albert Snailham. Anyway, years passed, and about 5 years ago, oh, there's some bees here, look. Probably quite rare bees. And yeah, I was reading something on the local Facebook pages, and lo and behold, there was somebody called Snailham. I thought there can't be too many Snailhams in Barrow-in-Furness, so I messaged this particular lady and said, "Are you related to Albert Snailham? He used to go in the House of Lords." He was a lovely little fella, and always cheerful and said hello, polite and everything. She said, "Oh yeah, that was my granddad. It's lovely to hear that somebody remembers him and remembers him as being a nice fella." And he was a nice fella, but obviously I remembered him for his wonderful name, Albert Snailham. What a great name. God bless him. So yeah, here we are. Growing up in Barrow-in-Furness in the 80s, Thatcher's Britain, the miners' strike and general unemployment, and it was a kind of depressing era, but the music was fantastic, and 80s music. Everybody still loves 80s music, don't they? And Barrow was fortunate to have, well, quite simply, probably the best club I've ever been in my life. And believe me, I've been in some nightclubs over the years, but Scorpio 1 or Maxim's or Rafters or all the other names that it possessed. Upstairs in the old public hall where I'd been for kids' parties as a child. It was just great. You went up these stairs and into this dance floor area, the bar on the right, and the same people, the same ladies behind the coat check stayed there for all the time the club was opened. And they must have seen some sights over the years. But so many drinks had been spilled that if you stood somewhere too long, your feet were stuck to the to the floor, and people used to trawl drinks. So if you stood at the side of the dance floor watching the girls dancing, and you'd turn around, put your pint down on a table behind you, and then you turn back to get it, and it was gone. It had been trawled. I don't know what the modern day expression for having your pint swiped was, but we called it trawling. I suppose you could go in there just pay your entrance fee and not actually buy any drinks and just go around and trawl pints, and bit of a thrill of the chase, a bit of a buzz, getting free drinks. So there you are. People who drank lager often, once they'd had the pints trawled a few times, you knew to keep hold of your beer, but they'd sometimes now excuse me for this, but they'd go to the toilet and fill up the pint with wee, and obviously drop a couple of ice cubes in it to cool it down and leave it on the table to see if anybody trawled it, and they often did. So that was probably the person who took it was so drunk they never even noticed anyway. But yeah, it was a great nightclub, and John Dixon, I think he was called, the DJ, great DJ. He'd play anything you asked him to, and had some tremendous nights in there, and it was ticket only on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, and you got in there, and some nights they had half-price drinks before. I think it was 10:30, which is a ridiculous time to go to a nightclub, but you could stock up on half-price shorts, and 2 for the price of 1. So we roll in from there, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then on a Friday night, Saturday morning, and then do exactly the same on a Saturday, and then on a Sunday night it was open. Sunday night, nightclub open. It was open until midnight, and that was unheard of because pubs had to shut at 10:30. But they circumvented it, they got round it by the fact that if it was serving food, you could stay up until midnight. So they used to put on this hot pot, and God knows what was in it. And anyway, everybody used to get a tray of sloppy hot pot and have that to eat, and it meant the club could stay open until midnight on a Sunday night. Of course, it was getting on for 1 o'clock in the morning by the time you walked home. Didn't get taxis, walked home. It used to take 3/4 of an hour to walk home from downtown Barrow-in-Furness. It was behind the town hall, and trying to get up for work the next day, not easy after 3 nights of night clubbing. And let me tell you this, it was some nights you go out with about £3, and have 6 or 7 beers. It makes you laugh. I mean, those the days of first generation Trivial Pursuit games, Space Invaders, and used to sit down. There was sit-down Space Invaders, so you'd sit down and facing somebody else and play against them like on a tabletop. Space Invaders, crazy. It was so novel back in the early 80s, and everybody loved playing. And I used to go to a pub called the Old Bank, and that had quite a good like this rocket going through like caves or something underwater. That was quite a good one. And the old bank had a rather eccentric bandit, and sometimes whether the mechanism was faulty or what, you used to have to get these 3 JPM symbols to win the jackpot, which was something ridiculous like a fiver. But bear in mind, you could go out for £3 on a night out, so a fiver was quite a bit of money in them days. And I recall once a friend of mine, Kelsey, he won the jackpot, and then the machine stuck on the jackpot for about the next 5 spins, so it just allowed him to hold the jackpot. So he won about 5 times, and he was flush that night. So yeah, that was quite fun. And one thing I'll say about the 80s was the girls' clothes. Oh God, it was like a Victorian age. The girls were all wearing like boiler suits and jumpsuits they called them, but they were just flipping boiler suits, and they were horrible. And the thing was, nowadays girls go out in next to nothing, and then they were all like Alison Moyet boiler suits, and oh God, it was, I mean, you could hardly see any of the figures. It was awful. And some of the other clothes they wore, it was awful. And us lads in that generation were deprived. And now, of course, young lads just take it for granted. You know, they shouldn't take it for granted, because all the girls today got tiny mini skirts on and crop tops. Flipping it. If you'd seen a girl like that in the 80s, you'd have flipping, your eyes would have been out cartoon-like on stalks. Instead, they were all like flipping neck to toe. It was like flipping, might as well have been wearing burqas. That's what it was like. So, yeah, that was the... oh, and of course, the other thing about the 80s was, of course, so many people smoked that, you know, you were secondary smoking. And some pubs, the fog of smoke was so thick you could hardly see. Your eyes stung. And when you got home, your clothes stunk the next morning. You stunk of fags. So, you know, you look back on the 80s and there's a kind of golden age of clubbing, which pubbing and clubbing it was, because there were so many people out. Everybody went out. Not like today. They went out early as well. Went out at flipping... Well, I went out about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, playing snooker and darts and dominoes down a great club called the St Mary's Club. The advantage of the St Mary's was it was open all afternoon. In those days, pubs closed at 3 o'clock, so it was kind of exciting to be in somewhere having a drink at 4 o'clock when everybody else was flipping twiddling their thumbs waiting for the pubs and clubs to open again at 7 o'clock. And all the working men's clubs. In Barrow there was loads. House of Lords, as I mentioned earlier, the Cons Club, the Engineers, and they all were rammed with people and just enjoying themselves of all ages. And there was queues. Oh, sorry. Enjoying the view, and she's enjoying the view, and who wouldn't? Look at that view. Look at that view. It's just amazing, isn't it? So yeah, Cons Club, Engineers, Preston Street, all these different clubs, and they were just packed out, and each of them had this curmudgeon bloke on the door who'd flipping make you wait forever to get in. And you remember, no, yeah, put some money in the box. So you'd have to pay to get in, a few pence. But you'd go in and these huge lounges with not a table spare. because it was full of people socialising and seeing their friends and enjoying themselves, and no big screen tellies in them days in the clubs, and people just socialised and drank, and every week in the local paper, the Evening Mail, there was like 3 or 4 pages of what's on this weekend, and everywhere had live music, and it was truly a golden age, really. And there's a chap I know, one of my neighbours, he played in quite a famous local group, Peyton's Pending, and they were on a TV show, Opportunity Knocks, and they nearly won, came second. But anyway, they basically, he said, they played every night, every single night. They had a gig. Monday night you could go out in Barrow and Furness and have a great night out. They'd go and listen to live music. I mean, imagine that now. Brilliant. But yeah, another thing about the 80s was the beer. The beer was beyond dreadful. Toby Light and Double Diamond, and oh God, it was undrinkable, really. As a real ale drinker myself now, you get the snob palate of real ale drinkers, but that wasn't real ale. It was just horrible chemical keg beer, and nasty. Barrow's that's one drawback. It's a bit of a real ale desert, he says as he trudges up a sand hill. Could be in the Sahara Desert, couldn't we? Couldn't we, Prince? Could be in the Sahara. But yeah, you couldn't buy decent real ale, really, without going to the local village pubs in the Furness area or up into the Lake District, Barrow. Still today is a bit of a real ale desert. There's certainly not many pubs selling quality real ale. You have to go over to West Yorkshire or something to drink quality beer. So yeah, there were drawbacks. And another one was fighting. Jesus, the fighting. There was fights everywhere, all the time. Every pub there was fights, but people just were inured to it. Oh, there's a fight over there, and you wouldn't even bother watching half the time. It's just yet another fight. And the pubs were that full that the combatants really didn't have room even to draw the fist back to punch each other, because it really was so ram full. So I'm painting a bit of a curate's egg of a picture of it, but if I had a time machine, I'd be there like a shot, just to experience it all over again. Obviously, I'd want to look like I did in the in the 80s rather than the wizened little old bald man that I've transmogrified myself into now. It's amazing how fast life passes. It really does. I mean, every year seems to pass more rapidly, and it's not fun. And as you get older, of course, your abilities to do things wane, and one thing that doesn't wane is your ability to whine about things waning. I'm up there in the first order of whingers and whiners about things waning, from the standard of driving on the roads and public utilities and services and too many people, and but when you get out here in this lovely tranquil place. Oh, was that a swallow? I haven't seen a swallow yet. A friend of mine today said he'd seen one yesterday, but I haven't seen one. And Can't say that was a confirmed sighting, so I'm not classing that as a first swallow yet. But yeah, when you get out here and you realise how, I was going to say timeless the dunes are, but they're not. They're forever changing. But you know what I mean. The scan scale Hawes will go on hopefully forever, being this fantastic panorama of dunes and wildlife and birds and larks. Yeah, I can just hear a lark in the distance there. There you go. What a lark. What a lark. That's a phrase you don't hear anymore, isn't it? That was a flipping early 20th century phrase. Oh, what a lark. And I said it to my daughter and she looked at me like, as she often does, like I've completely lost it, completely insane. What a lark does that mean? What sort of rubbish is that? But it was common. It was a common phraseology. Here's what's common in the 20s of the 21st century. People leaving litter. I mean, so here you are, teenager. You come for a picnic. Where are you going to choose to have your picnic and your flipping disposable barbecue? You're gonna choose. Oh yeah, this is a good spot because there's all litter on the ground. Let's sit here and have our picnic because it's great, isn't it? It looks great. This loads of litter. Yeah, you know I was on about whinging and whining, but this is really part of one of my pet hates. So, if you don't like litter, why'd you leave it? Why would you leave it? And disposable barbecues, who flipping thought they were a good idea? Because people just, disposable, they just leave them. They have the barbecue and they just leave them. They don't flipping take them back to the car park where there's 2 bins that you can put them in and get in the car and drive off. They just leave them thinking, oh well, somebody else will pick them up, or who cares? So it is very, very strange. So if this ever gets watched by anybody who's young, just think, well, would I like to go back there and be surrounded by litter, or would I like to see it all pristine and nice? Well, some people will say they'd rather have it the litter, but most people will say they'd rather have it all lovely and like this, like it is now. So pick up your litter, put it in a bag. Even a doggy bag would do. I picked it up and put it in a doggy bag, and I'll put it in the bin. It's so easy. And there we are. I've noticed you can hear seagulls, but crows as well. Crows are now taking it on themselves to come down the shoreline and search for food. Now, I don't know whether that's a recent phenomenon or crows have always done that. But I don't remember seeing loads of crows down here looking for food. So whether they've followed the seagulls, because the seagulls are all in town emptying the bins, and maybe they met up with a crow and said, hey, do you know something? We used to eat at the beach and there was loads of food, it was nice, but we prefer cast off McDonald's and KFC, so that's why we're here. And one of the crows said, well, blimey, did you hear that seagull? He reckons there's loads of good nosh down the beach, healthy stuff as well. Let's go and have a look. And they got down here and thought, hey, that black-headed seagull was right. That herring gull, he was spot on. These mussels and things are delicious, brilliant. Just need a bit of pepper or McDonald's ketchup, and they'd be spot on. Oh, look at that cloud. Look at that cloud. It looks like a bit like a seal, doesn't it? Looks like a seal swimming. Look, can you see its fin? There's a seal face at the left-hand side. Look. Brilliant. Or is it a dolphin? Could be a dolphin, actually. Look, dolphin. Look, with the tail. Bit of a tail at the back there. It's like a... Look up in the sky and do a Rorschach test. But you can't beat clouds, can you? Love clouds, the different sorts of cloud. Cirrus and stratus and alto cirrus and cumulus and nimbus and people take clouds for granted, don't they? But most people don't even notice them. But they are obviously essential to life on Earth. So enjoy your clouds and just look in them when the sun goes down. It might be a good sunset tonight because it's there's clouds around for the dying rays of the sun to reflect off. You can't beat springtime, can you? It's 6:30 now, and the nights are getting ever longer. In April and May and June, and England's a great place to be for all its faults when it's springtime and the weather's like this. Why would you want to be abroad? It's just tremendous. And you can sit out of an evening in your garden if you're lucky to have one, or your backyard, and just enjoy the simple pleasure of being outside and feeling the sun on your face. As long as you've got your factor 50 on, of course. And it just makes you feel better, doesn't it? Yeah, these are like violas. They're like violas, but they've got a beachy scientific name that Pete Burton was telling me about when I met him the other day, probably about this spot actually, when he was photographing bees, and he knew all the names of the different flora and fauna of this area. He was telling me, this is reasonably interesting. He was telling me that Dr. Barnes Wallace, who worked in the shipyard in Barrow in Furness, he'd been involved in the building of airships in Barrow. We had an airship production facility, and the era of the airship came to an end with the loss of British airships like I think it was the R101. Of course, the most obvious tragedy was the loss of the German airship, the Hindenburg, in New Jersey, as witnessed by John Boy Walton. If you've seen that episode of The Waltons, it's a good one. John Boy is a journalist, and he goes to New Jersey and to see the Hindenburg, and he sees it coming down in flames, and remarkably quite a few people survived. There's amazing footage of the burning of the Hindenburg and people jumping out and surviving. Incredible. But Barrow's linked with the Hindenburg, 1930s. The Hindenburg passed over Barrow in Furness, and another of my gardening ladies who is 98 years old, 99 in August, Jean. She was telling me that she was on Andover Street in the back street with her friends, and suddenly one of them cried out, "What is that?" And the Hindenburg passed over. And my dad, who's 93, lived at Roos, North Row in Roos, and he was at the his dad's allotment at Ruse, still there, that allotment. Backed onto one of the three Whippet racing tracks in Barrow, and his dad was with his uncle at the allotment with my dad, and suddenly the Hindenburg appeared, and my granddad, my dad's dad, sent him back to the house as fast as he could go to get the family box brownie so he could take a photo of the Hindenburg, which they had at the house for a long time, and it's now mysteriously disappeared. I haven't been able to find that, unfortunately. I will try and have another look for the lost photo of the Hindenburg. That was almost like the Jacques-Yves Cousteau searching for the lost treasure of the Incas. The lost treasure of the Incas. Philippe and I dived down to the bottom of Lake Titicaca in search of the lost treasure of the Incas. The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. Brilliant that was. Jacques Cousteau was one of the pioneers of scuba, and a very famous series he made in the 1970s and 80s, maybe only in the 70s, describing his undersea explorations of the deep. Brilliant. From his boat, the Calypso. Brilliant. I might have to look that up on YouTube. Yeah, it was good, was Jacques-Yves Cousteau. Not to be confused with Jacques-Yves Clouseau, the Pink Panther. Oh, he wasn't the Pink Panther, he was the detective searching for the Pink Panther, the late great Peter Sellers. So, yeah, what were we on about? The Hindenburg. Yeah, so somewhere in my parents' house is hopefully, a photo of the Hindenburg. But incredibly that he saw it, and then one of my gardening customers on Walney Island in Barrow-in-Furness, 11 mile long, Walney Island, saw the Hindenburg the same day. Maybe we should set up a Facebook group of I Saw the Hindenburg, and they can exchange Hindenburg stories about where they saw the Hindenburg crossing in Barrow-in-Furness. That'd be quite interesting. I'll have to do that when I get home. Get my dad reminiscing about seeing it. He did this afternoon actually. Connie's Head Priory, well worth a visit if you ever get the chance. Went there, had a decaf latte, and my dad was telling my daughter about when he saw the Hindenburg. Amazing. Yeah. Apparently, where the story is in Barrow that my dad lived on North Row. He was born there in Ruse. There's 2 rows of terraces, beautiful sandstone terraces. Some people have sacrilegiously had them rendered, but in the original sandstone they're absolutely stunning, and they were built for Cornish miners coming up to mine the iron ore, which was the driver for Barrow's rapid industrialisation in the 19th century. And the Germans had labelled the aerial photographs taken by the Hindenburg of North and South Row as factories, which may explain why they dropped landmines on that particular area. My dad was very fortunate to survive. He was in an air raid shelter one night, and it's quite an amusing story. The local postmistress of the post office on North Row used to refuse to come in the air raid shelter because she didn't want to mix with the Commodore Garden riffraff. But this particular night in the Barrow Blitz, the air raid warden ARP warden forced her and her husband to come in the air raid shelter, and she refused to sit down, and in case she caught anything off the seats or beds, so she stood aloof holding a china cup and saucer, having a cup of tea, and suddenly there was a massive whoosh, and the doors of the air raid shelter burst open, and everybody screamed, and a landmine had dropped on the allotments above roofs, and but for the blast wall, all air raid shelters had a brick wall in front of the door, and the blast wall saved their lives. And it was still demolished, of course, but nobody in the shelter was injured. But when they all came to their senses and looked round, there was the snooty postmistress transfixed, just holding the handle of the china cup, and the saucer and the cup itself had been blown away, but she was still frozen, holding the holding the handle of the cup, and somebody gently prized her fingers apart and sat her down, and funnily enough, after that she came in the air raid shelter every single night for the duration of the Barrow Blitz and its aftermath. There we are. It's funny how one story segs into another, isn't it, Prince? Hey? There we are. We've had a nice walk. We've seen precisely one person on this glorious spring evening here at Roanhead, or Sandscale Hawes as it's known to the National Trust. So yeah, it's been great. Obviously picked up a bit of litter, haven't seen any more, so hopefully people are taking their the litter back to the car park. And here we are, back at the car park. Used to be a lady here with a hut selling ice creams when I was a young lad in the 1970s. Ice creams and buckets and spades and little like inflatable rings and sweeties, and sadly in the 80s the local youth thought it'd be a good idea to burn it down, so they did, and that was the end of that. Since then this new car park's been erected with the wonky hut, the red hut, which is a nod to the iron ore miners, the red earth of Furness, very rich in iron ore, top quality iron ore, and a bit of a nod to the black huts, which is a destination that we will visit another time. Right, Prince, time to go home and have some tea.